The chamber was massive, built to hold representatives from 40 different species. Crystal pillars stretched up toward a dome that showed the stars beyond, and the air hummed with translation devices working in dozens of languages at once. Ambassador Ji Woo sat at the small human table, his hands folded calmly on the smooth surface. Beside him, Ambassador Hana reviewed their proposal one last time on a datapad. They had come here in good faith, ready to negotiate. The Galactic Council sat on elevated platforms arranged in a circle around the chamber floor. High Chancellor Vrix, a Thalaxian with silver skin and 4 arms, looked down at the humans with barely concealed amusement. His species had ruled the council for 3 centuries, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone who had never been truly challenged. "Let us begin," Vrix announced. His voice amplified throughout the chamber. "The human delegation has requested this meeting to discuss territorial claims in the outer reach sectors. We have reviewed their petition." Ji Woo stood smoothly. "Thank you, Chancellor. As outlined in our documents, humanity has established 12 colonies in the disputed zones over the past 15 years. We've invested significant resources in developing these worlds. We're here to formalize our claim and establish clear boundaries that respect both human interests and council authority." A sound like laughter rippled through the council members. Councillor Dreth, a Morvathian whose scales gleamed blue-black under the lights, leaned forward on his platform. "Significant resources? We've seen your settlements. Small outposts, barely self-sufficient. You speak as if you've built empires." Hannah's jaw tightened, but Ji Woo remained calm. "Our colonies may be modest by some standards, but they're home to over 2 million humans. These are families, communities, and functioning societies. We're not asking for charity. We're asking for recognition of what we've built." Vrix made a show of consulting his notes. "The Council has deliberated on this matter. We are prepared to offer humanity formal recognition of 3% of the territories you've claimed. The remaining areas fall under existing Council jurisdiction and will be reallocated to species with greater need and capability. 3%. Ji Woo had expected difficult negotiations, but this was an insult. He took a slow breath. "Chancellor, surely there's room for compromise. We've conducted extensive surveys showing these worlds were unclaimed when we arrived. Many were considered worthless until our engineers made them viable." "Worthless?" Dreth's voice dripped with mockery. "Perhaps they seemed worthless to primitive sensors. Our experts have re-evaluated the mineral content and strategic value. These worlds are far too important to leave in the hands of a species that only left their home system 70 years ago." The chamber filled with murmurs of agreement. Ji Woo noticed several council members weren't even paying attention anymore, engaged in their own conversations. Hana stood up beside him. "With respect, Counselor, you're underestimating human capabilities. Our fleets may be newer than yours, but we've developed innovations that give us significant defensive advantages. We're not asking for conflict, but neither are we powerless." This time the laughter was open and loud. Vrix raised one of his hands for silence, but his eyes gleamed with amusement. "Defensive advantages? My dear Ambassador, the Council's combined fleet numbers over 40,000 warships. We've maintained galactic peace for 1,000 years. Your entire species operates perhaps 200 vessels of questionable military value. Please, let's keep these discussions realistic." Ji Woo felt something cold settle in his chest. Not anger, exactly. Something clearer and harder. "Chancellor, we didn't come here to compare military strength. We came to find a peaceful solution that respects both parties." "And we've offered one," Vrix replied smoothly. 3% is more than generous for such a young species. You should be grateful the Council acknowledges your presence at all. Many felt we should simply reclaim the entire region and relocate your colonists to designated zones where you can be properly supervised. Supervised? Hana's voice was sharp now. Dreth waved a dismissive claw. Your children playing with toys you don't understand. The galaxy is a dangerous place. Species like yours need guidance, protection. The Council provides this. In exchange, we expect obedience to our decisions. Ji Wu looked around the chamber. Some council members looked uncomfortable with Dreth's bluntness, but none spoke up. Others nodded agreement. A few were still not even paying attention to the proceedings. After traveling for 3 weeks to reach this station, after preparing dozens of proposals and compromise positions, the council had already made their decision before the talks even began. Ambassador Ji Wu, Vrix said, his tone now carrying false patience. We understand you're disappointed, but this is how galactic governance works. The Council weighs many factors you cannot possibly comprehend. Trust that we know what's best. Take the 3%. Build your little colonies there. In a few generations, perhaps your species will be ready for greater responsibility. Ji Wu stood in silence for a long moment. He could feel Hana's tension beside him, could sense her waiting for his lead. Behind them, Captain Dae-Soon and 3 other human officers stood at attention, their faces carefully neutral. Finally, Ji Wu spoke. Chancellor Vrix, members of the Council, we came here hoping to find partners. We came offering friendship and cooperation between equals. Instead, we found only condescension and mockery. Ambassador, Vrix's voice hardened slightly. Be careful with your tone. No, Ji Wu said quietly. I don't think I will. You've made it clear how you view humanity. You see us as primitives, as children, as a nuisance to be managed. That's your right. But it's also our right to decide we have no interest in being treated this way. Dreth laughed. What are you saying, human? You'll take your toys and go home? Ji Wu began gathering his documents, sliding them into his case with deliberate care. That's exactly what I'm saying, Counselor. Humanity formally withdraws from these negotiations. We withdraw from all Council proceedings, all joint initiatives, and all cooperative agreements. Effective immediately. The laughter died. Vrix leaned forward. Ambassador, don't be hasty. You're upset, but I'm not upset, Chancellor. I'm done. Ji Wu closed his case and looked up at the elevated platforms, meeting Vrix's eyes directly. You want to know what humanity learned in our short time in space? We learned that respect cannot be demanded or begged for. It can only be given freely, or not at all. You've chosen not to give it, so we're choosing to leave. Hana gathered her materials as well. Behind them, Captain Dae-Soon and the other officers formed up. The humans moved toward the chamber exit with quiet dignity. You need the Council more than we need you, Dreth called after them. You'll be back within a month, begging for our protection. Ji Wu paused at the doorway and looked back. Perhaps you'll discover that you needed us more than you realized. I suppose we'll all find out together. The doors closed behind the human delegation with a soft hiss. In the chamber, silence fell for a moment before conversations resumed. Most council members had already dismissed the incident. Humans were emotional creatures. Everyone knew that. They'd be back soon enough. Only Vrix felt a small twist of unease as he watched the doors. Something in Ji Wu's voice at the end, that certainty. He pushed the feeling away. The council had stood for 1,000 years. One species walking away changed nothing. Outside, Ji Wu and his delegation walked through the station corridors toward their ship. None of them spoke until they were safely in their private shuttle. That went even worse than expected. Hana said finally. Ji Wu nodded slowly. Send word to all human territories. We're going dark. Close the borders. Cease all council cooperation. It's time they learned what humanity actually provides. The shuttle detached from the station and turned toward home. Behind them, the council continued their meeting, already moving on to other business. They had no idea that everything had just changed. The first month passed quietly. Too quietly. High Chancellor Vrix reviewed the reports in his private office, a frown creasing his silver features. The humans hadn't sent any further communications. No requests for reconsideration. No angry demands. No desperate pleas. Just silence. They're being stubborn, he told his aide. Give them time. They'll realize they need council trade agreements and protection. But the second month brought something unexpected. Trade Minister Kelvin, a Parsean whose species controlled much of the galaxy's commercial networks, requested an urgent meeting. We have a problem, Kelvin said, spreading data across Vrix's desk display. Human goods have stopped flowing into council markets entirely. Medical supplies, computer components, specialized alloys. All gone. Vrix waved a hand dismissively. We'll find new suppliers. The galaxy is large. It's not that simple. Kelvin's voice was tight with worry. Human medical isotopes were 90% of the galactic supply. They developed a production method that's 5 times more efficient than anyone else's. We can make them ourselves, but it'll take months to scale up production, and they'll cost 3 times as much. Then we pay more. The council has resources. There's more, Kelvin continued. Hospitals on 17 worlds are already reporting shortages. And it's not just medicine. Human computational systems run 70% of our communication networks. They're still working, but without updates and maintenance, they're starting to develop errors. Small ones now, but growing. Vrix felt the first real stirring of concern. What are you saying? I'm saying humanity was more integrated into our economy than anyone realized. They weren't the largest supplier of anything, but they were critical to dozens of systems. And now they're simply gone. The third month brought worse news. Director Myra, the Council's intelligence chief, reported that all human ships had withdrawn to positions behind a newly established defensive perimeter. Every human colony in the disputed zones had gone dark, responding to all hails with automated messages stating they were no longer accepting outside communications. What about reconnaissance? Vrix demanded. Myra's face was grim. We've sent 12 scout ships to probe human space. None returned. No distress signals, no debris, nothing. They simply vanished. How is that possible? We don't know. Our analysis suggests some kind of advanced detection and defense grid we didn't know they possessed. But we can't confirm anything without risking more ships. Counselor Dreth, called to the emergency session, was less concerned. It's a bluff. They're hiding behind their borders, hoping we'll panic. We should send a battle group to remind them of their place. And if we lose a battle group the same way we lost the scouts? Myra asked coldly. That shut Dreth up, but only for a moment. You're telling me we're afraid of humans now? The species we were laughing at 3 months ago? Vrix rubbed his temples. What else do we know? Myra brought up a star map. Red lines marked human territory. Every border world has been reinforced with new defensive installations. We don't know what they are, because our long-range scans can't penetrate the interference they're generating. More concerning, we've detected no traffic in or out of human space. Not even civilian vessels. It's like they've sealed themselves off completely. They can't sustain that, Dreth insisted. No species can be completely self-sufficient. Humanity apparently believes they can, Myra replied. Or they're willing to endure hardship to make their point. By the 4th month, the situation had deteriorated further. Counselor Yaris, a Keltharian who usually stayed quiet in council sessions, requested time to speak. We need to discuss the elephant in the room, she said. The translator struggled with the Earth idiom, but her meaning was clear. 3 frontier conflicts have erupted in regions where human peacekeeping forces maintained order. The Draxi and the Velm are at war. The Corvin territories are descending into chaos. And the Outer Rim pirate attacks have increased by 400%. What does that have to do with the humans? Dreth demanded. Everything, Yaris replied sharply. Humans had ships stationed throughout those regions. Not large forces, just a few vessels. But they were there, providing stability. We all thought they were just trying to look important. Now they're gone, and we're seeing what they were actually doing. Vrix reviewed the reports himself that night. Yaris was right. Humanity had maintained what they called presence patrols in dozens of systems. Small groups of ships, rarely more than 3 or 4, cycling through regular routes. When asked, the humans said they were training exercises and exploration missions. The Council had considered it harmless posturing. Now those regions were falling apart. Pirates who had stayed quiet were suddenly bold. Old territorial disputes were flaring into violence. Trade routes that had been safe for decades were now dangerous. They were holding things together, Rick said aloud to his empty office. And we never noticed. The 5th month brought a delegation from the Council, authorized to approach human space and request dialogue. They were turned away at the border by an automated system that was polite but absolutely firm. The Galactic Council chose to negotiate in bad faith. Humanity has no further interest in Council affairs. Please depart human space immediately. The delegation tried to send personal messages to Ambassador Ji Wu, to Hana, to any human contact they had. Every message bounced back undelivered. It was as if humanity had built a wall around themselves and simply refused to acknowledge the galaxy beyond it. Admiral Taemin, commander of Earth's Deep Space Fleet, was mentioned in one intelligence report. A Council spy had caught a fragment of a human military transmission before it was encrypted. Taemin had apparently said, "Hold the line. Don't engage unless fired upon. Let them figure it out." Figure what out? Vrix wondered. By the 6th month, the answer was becoming clear. The galactic economy was straining. Not collapsing, not yet, but definitely hurting. The medical isotope shortage had grown critical. 3 Council member species were facing healthcare crises. The computational errors in communication systems had cascaded into serious failures. 2 major trading networks had gone offline for days. And the problems kept multiplying in unexpected ways. A research station studying dark matter was abandoned because the specialized sensors it needed were human-made. An agricultural planet faced crop failures because the genetic modifications they used required human expertise to maintain. A mining operation shut down because the extraction equipment used human-designed control systems that were failing without updates. They were everywhere. Trade Minister Kelvin reported to an emergency council session. Not obviously, not in large numbers. But humans were involved in hundreds of small but critical operations throughout council space. Engineering consultants, software designers, medical researchers, technical advisors. All gone now. How did we not know this? Someone asked. Because they weren't flashy about it, Yaris answered. Humans didn't demand attention or credit. They just quietly made themselves useful in 1,000 different ways. And now we're discovering how useful they actually were. Director Myra added another disturbing piece of information. Our analysis suggests the human military is much stronger than we believed. Based on energy signatures and fleet movements we've detected at extreme range, they may have 5 times as many warships as our estimates suggested. And those defensive installations on their borders are generating power readings that suggest weapon systems far more advanced than anything they showed us. That's impossible, Dreth said, but he sounded less certain now. They only left their home system 70 years ago. Maybe they learn fast, Myra said quietly. Or maybe they were letting us underestimate them. The war game simulations came back in the 7th month. The Council's military strategists had run hundreds of scenarios for potential conflict with humanity. The results were classified at the highest level, but Vrix had access. Every simulation showed staggering Council casualties. Even in victories, the losses were deemed unacceptable. In many scenarios, the outcome was complete defeat. The strategists concluded that human defensive positions were too strong, their territory too vast, and their technological capabilities too unknown to risk direct confrontation. Vrix stared at the reports in disbelief. We laughed at them. We called their fleet toys. We were wrong, his chief military advisor said simply. The humans were hiding their true strength. Or we were too arrogant to see it. Probably both. By the 8th month, smaller species in the Council were openly questioning the leadership. Why had the Council insulted humanity? Why hadn't they recognized human contributions? Why was the Council unable to fix the problems humanity's absence had created? Vrix called another emergency session. We need to reach out to the humans again. Make them understand we're willing to negotiate properly this time. They won't listen, Yaris said. We had our chance. We threw it away. Then what do you suggest? Dreth snapped. He was looking more desperate now, his earlier bluster gone. I suggest we face the truth, Yaris replied. We didn't need humans. We thought they needed us. We were wrong about that. Humanity was holding together pieces of the Council we didn't even know were broken. And when we insulted them, they didn't fight back. They just left. And now we're the ones suffering. The chamber fell silent. The truth of it hung in the air like smoke. They had made a terrible mistake, and they had no idea how to fix it. The hospital ward was quiet, except for the steady beep of medical monitors. Medical Director Thane walked between the beds, his face drawn with exhaustion. He was a Rothian, a species known for their advanced medical knowledge, but right now that knowledge felt useless. How many? He asked his assistant. 43 patients in critical condition across this facility alone. Hundreds more throughout the system. The isotope shortage means we can't perform the treatments they need. Thane closed his eyes. And the alternative suppliers? 3 months away from full production. Maybe longer. And when they do start producing, the costs will be triple what we paid before. This was happening on medical stations throughout Council space. The human-produced medical isotopes had been cheap, reliable, and abundant. Nobody had questioned where they came from, or what would happen if they stopped coming. Now people were dying because of that oversight. On the industrial world of Calver 5, factories stood silent. The specialized alloys used in their manufacturing processes were all human-made. Engineers had tried to source alternatives, but the replacements didn't work with existing equipment. Retooling would take months and cost millions. Thousands of workers sat idle. Wages stopped. Families suffering. The owner of the largest factory complex sent an angry message to his council representative. You told us the humans were insignificant. You said we didn't need them. Now my entire workforce is unemployed because nobody else can make the materials we need. Fix this. Similar messages were flooding council offices from 100 worlds. The complaints were everywhere, touching every sector of society. Communication networks were failing more frequently. Research stations couldn't continue their work. Agricultural worlds faced problems with modified crops. Mining operations sat idle. Transportation systems developed errors, and the council seemed powerless to address any of it. Captain Haiyan Wu stood on the observation deck of the human border station, watching the council ships that occasionally appeared at the edge of sensor range. They never came close, never tried to force their way through. They just looked, scanned, and left. Another one, his tactical officer reported. Scout-class vessel. Same pattern as before. They're trying to gather intelligence. Let them look, Haiyan Wu said calmly. They won't learn anything useful. Sir, we've intercepted communications suggesting the Council is experiencing significant economic problems. I expect they are. Haiyan Wu turned from the window. How are our colonies doing? All systems reporting stable? Food production is at 103% of requirement. Manufacturing is meeting all needs. Morale is actually improving. People are proud of what we're building. That was the truth that the Council couldn't understand. Humanity had been preparing for self-sufficiency from the beginning. Every colony was designed to be independent if necessary. The networks between human worlds were robust and redundant. They had built their civilization to survive without anyone's help. They had hoped to be partners with the galaxy. But they had been ready to stand alone if partnership was impossible. Director Myra presented her latest intelligence report to the Council with a sense of dread. The news just kept getting worse. 2 more member species have made secret contact with humanity, she announced. The Yenuri and the Frosts. Both are negotiating separate trade and defense agreements. The council chamber erupted in angry voices. Chancellor Vrix raised his hands for silence. That violates council law. They cannot make separate agreements with humanity. They're doing it anyway, Myra replied. And we can't stop them without forcing the issue, which might drive more species into similar arrangements. The council's authority is eroding. Councillor Yaris stood. This is what we feared. We thought we could isolate humanity and force them to accept our terms. Instead, we've isolated ourselves. Other species see that the council made a mistake, and they're looking for alternatives. Dreth slammed his fist on his platform. This is unacceptable. We need to act. Show strength. We tried that, Myra said quietly. 2 weeks ago, Councillor Dreth authorized a strike on a human border outpost. 12 ships, our best assault craft. They were destroyed in under 4 minutes. The human defenses were overwhelming, and humanity's response was to extend their isolation zone by 20 light years, claiming resource-rich territory we had earmarked for council development. The chamber fell silent. No one had known about the failed attack. Dreth looked like he wanted to disappear into his platform. 12 ships, someone whispered. Gone in 4 minutes. The recording from the surviving escape pods shows weapon systems we don't have countermeasures for, Myra continued. Energy weapons of unknown type, drone swarms with artificial intelligence beyond our capability, and point defense systems that intercepted every missile we launched. The humans weren't trying to destroy us completely. They were sending a message. This is what happens when you attack. Vrix felt something cold settle in his stomach. If they have that kind of defensive capability, what about offensive? We don't know. But our analysts believe that if humanity decided to attack council space, we couldn't stop them. Not without casualties that would dwarf anything in our recorded history. The implications hung in the air. The species they had mocked, the civilization they had dismissed as primitive, could potentially destroy the council if they chose to. And the only reason they hadn't was because they didn't want to. Humanity wasn't afraid of the council. They simply didn't care enough to fight. On Earth, Ambassador Ji Wu reviewed reports in his office. A year had passed since they walked out of the council chambers. A year of silence, of isolation, of letting the galaxy learn its lesson. Ambassador Sojin, his former assistant and now a full ambassador herself, brought in the latest communications from council space. It's getting worse for them. The economic disruption is spreading. Political instability is growing. Several council representatives have been recalled by their governments for handling the situation so poorly. And how are our people? Thriving, actually. Colony growth is steady. Our internal economy is strong. We've established trade agreements with 6 non-council species who see the value of treating us as equals. And our technological development hasn't slowed. If anything, focusing our resources internally has accelerated innovation. Ji Woo nodded slowly. This had been the gamble. Could humanity survive without the Council? The answer was clearly yes. Could the Council survive without humanity? That answer was becoming clear too. His desk communication system chimed. A priority message from Border Security. Sir, we have another Council delegation requesting permission to enter human space. This is the fourth one this month. Standard response, Ji Woo said. Polite denial. The Council knows what they need to do if they want real dialogue. Yes, sir. So Jin watched him carefully. How long do we maintain this position? Until they understand. Really understand, not just intellectually. They need to feel it in their economy, in their politics, in their daily lives. They need to wake up every morning knowing that the galaxy is less stable, less prosperous, and less secure because they chose arrogance over partnership. That's harsh. Yes, Ji Woo agreed. But kindness didn't work. Patience didn't work. Reasonable negotiation didn't work. So we'll teach them the hard way. Sometimes that's the only way lessons stick. Back in Council space, the situation continued to deteriorate. Young Su's revolutionary energy systems, which humanity had shared with the Council years ago, began experiencing failures. The systems had backdoors built in, security features that humanity could control remotely. Now those features were being activated. Power stations went offline. Starship drives stuttered and failed. Industrial equipment ground to a halt. And with each failure, the same message appeared in the diagnostic logs. Unauthorized use detected. Please contact human technical support for assistance. But there was no human technical support anymore. The contact information led to dead links and disconnected services. The Council's engineers tried to bypass the security features and found themselves locked out completely. The systems were designed so elegantly that reverse engineering would take years. Minister Kelvin delivered a report that made Vrix physically ill. The economic impact of humanity's withdrawal was now calculated at over 3 trillion credits in lost productivity, replacement costs, and economic disruption. And that number was growing daily. We can't sustain this, Kelvin said bluntly. Within 6 months, we'll start seeing member species break away from the Council entirely. Not because they want to, but because their economies are failing and the Council can't help them. What do you recommend? Kelvin looked at Vrix with something like pity. Apologize. Genuinely. Completely. Beg them to return if we have to. Because the alternative is watching the Council collapse around us. That night, Vrix sat alone in his office, staring at the star map on his wall. The human territories glowed in soft blue light. Such a small portion of the galaxy, really. A young species that had barely left their home system, and yet they were bringing the Council to its knees without firing a shot, without making threats, without doing anything except refusing to participate. The worst part was realizing they had been right all along. They had asked for respect, for partnership between equals. And the Council had laughed at them. No, nobody was laughing. The Council chamber was half empty. That alone spoke volumes about how far things had fallen. 6 member species had formally suspended their participation in Council affairs. 3 more had sent junior representatives instead of their ambassadors. A calculated insult that everyone understood. Chancellor Vrix looked older than he had a year ago. The silver of his skin had dulled, and his forearms hung heavily at his sides. He called the session to order with none of his former confidence. We are here to discuss the continuing situation with humanity and the cascading effects on Council stability. Counselor. Yaris stood immediately. Continuing situation? Chancellor, let's be honest. This is a crisis of our own making, and it's destroying everything we've built. We need to take responsibility and fix it. We've tried reaching out, Brix protested weakly. They won't respond. We've sent delegations asking them to come back on our terms, Yaris corrected sharply. We haven't actually apologized. We haven't acknowledged our mistakes. We've just asked them to forgive us without earning that forgiveness. Before Brix could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the station. Security feeds showed multiple ships approaching the Council Chamber station. Not human ships. These belonged to the Thros Confederation, one of the species that had secretly reached out to humanity. A transmission came through. This is Ambassador Kethis of the Thros Confederation. We are formally withdrawing from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. We have negotiated mutual defense and trade agreements with humanity that better serve our people's interests. The Council's continued mismanagement and refusal to address its failures have left us no choice. The transmission ended. The Thros ships departed, and the Council chamber sat in stunned silence. They can't do this, Dreth said, but his voice lacked conviction. They just did, Yaris replied. And others will follow. We're watching the Council collapse in real time. The collapse accelerated over the following weeks. The Inari Republic announced they were forming an alternative coalition with humanity at its center. 4 smaller species joined them. Public opinion across Council space turned decisively against the Council's leadership. Protests erupted on a dozen worlds demanding that their governments make peace with humanity. Myra brought news that made everything worse. Our surveillance systems have detected something we missed before. Humanity has been watching us. The entire time they've been silent, they've had observer ships in Council space. Stealth technology we didn't know they possessed. They've been gathering intelligence on everything we do. Where are these ships? Fricks demanded. Everywhere. We've identified signatures in 73 systems. There might be more we haven't detected. They've been invisible, silent, and completely undetectable until now. And we only found them because one had a minor reactor fluctuation that our deep space monitors caught by accident. The implications were staggering. Humanity hadn't been hiding behind their borders. They had been watching, learning, studying the Council's every move. They knew exactly how bad things had gotten. They knew about every Council discussion, every failed attempt to address the crisis, every moment of the slow unraveling. Ambassador Sojin received a visitor at the human border station. It was a private individual, not an official delegation. A young Keltharian named Risa, who claimed to be a journalist. I want to tell the real story, Risa said. The Council's official narrative is that humanity abandoned the galaxy. But that's not true, is it? Sojin considered carefully. Humanity had maintained silence for over a year. But perhaps it was time for their side to be heard. What do you want to know? Why did you withdraw? The truth. Sojin brought up the recording of that final Council session. She let Risa watch it in full. The condescension, the mockery, the casual dismissal of human concerns. The laughter when Hana mentioned their capabilities. The insults about being children with toys. Risa watched in silence, her expression growing more disturbed. This is what happened? The Council treated you like this? That's what happened. We came in good faith. We offered partnership. And they laughed at us. So we left. Because dignity matters more than acceptance from people who don't respect you. Can I share this? Yes, it's time the galaxy saw the truth. The recording spread like wildfire through galactic networks. Within days, billions of beings had watched the Council's treatment of the human delegation. Public opinion, which had been turning against the Council, now became openly hostile. They humiliated them, one popular commentator said. And then they act surprised when humanity refused to come back. Who would return to that? Captain Hyan Wu released a public statement, the first official human communication to the wider galaxy in over a year. His words were simple but devastating. Humanity attempted peace. We offered cooperation, friendship, and partnership between equals. The Galactic Council chose mockery and dismissal instead. We are not angry. We are not seeking revenge. We simply have no interest in relationships built on disrespect. The galaxy is large. There are many species who understand the value of mutual respect. We will build our future with them. The statement was translated into hundreds of languages. The message was clear. Humanity wasn't coming back to the Council. They had moved on. On the Council station, Rix faced a vote of no confidence. The chamber was packed now, every species present. They weren't there to support him. They were there to watch him fall. Councillor Yaris presented the charges. Chancellor Vrix, under your leadership, the Council has made catastrophic diplomatic and strategic errors. You insulted a potential ally, dismissed their capabilities, and when they withdrew, you failed to address the situation appropriately. Your actions have led directly to the current crisis. Member species are leaving. Our economy is in shambles. Our authority is questioned everywhere. You have failed in your duty. Vrix wanted to defend himself, but what could he say? Everything Yaris said was true. He had failed. They all had failed, but as Chancellor, the ultimate responsibility was his. I call for a vote, Yaris continued. All in favor of removing Chancellor Vrix from office? The vote was overwhelming. Only Dreth and 2 others voted against. Vrix stood slowly, removed his symbols of office, and walked from the chamber. His centuries-old family legacy ended in disgrace. Yaris was elected as the new Chancellor. Her first act was to form a commission to investigate the full extent of humanity's contributions to Council society. The findings, when they came, were shocking. Humans had been involved in maintaining peace in 37 different regions. They had provided critical components for communication networks spanning hundreds of systems. Their medical research had led to treatments used across the galaxy. Their engineering consultants had solved problems on countless worlds. Their trade networks had connected species who otherwise might never have worked together. They weren't just members of our galactic community, the report concluded. They were the glue holding together dozens of separate pieces. And we never noticed because they didn't seek credit or attention. They just quietly made themselves indispensable. A second report detailed the backdoors and security features in human technology that was now failing throughout Council space. The report's conclusion was damning. The humans built dependency into their systems, but not as a weapon. These features were designed for legitimate security purposes. The fact that we're now locked out is our own fault for taking their technology without maintaining proper relationships with its creators. Ambassador Ji Wu received a personal message from Yaris. It was simple and direct. Ambassador Ji Wu, I am the new Chancellor of the Galactic Council. I know that title probably means nothing to you now, and I understand why. We were wrong. I was wrong. I sat in that chamber and watched you be humiliated, and I said nothing. I'm ashamed of that. I'm not asking you to forget or immediately forgive, but I am asking for the chance to begin rebuilding trust. The galaxy needs humanity. More importantly, the galaxy needs the partnership you offered us a year ago. If you're willing to consider dialogue, on your terms and at your convenience, I will come to you personally. No demands. No expectations. Just an honest conversation about how we might move forward. With respect and hope for better relations, Chancellor Yaris. Ji Wu read the message 3 times. Something had shifted in the tone. This wasn't the Council demanding. This was a person asking. There was humility there, and what seemed like genuine understanding. He showed it to Hannah. What do you think? I think they're finally learning, she said quietly. But one message doesn't rebuild trust. They need to prove they mean it. Agreed. But maybe it's time to see if they're capable of real change. Ji Woo composed a response carefully. Chancellor Yaris, your message is noted. Humanity is willing to consider dialogue, but not as supplicants returning to the Council. If we engage again, it will be as equals, with genuine respect from all parties. We require concrete demonstrations of the Council's changed attitude before formal discussions can begin. If you're sincere about rebuilding relationships, prove it through actions, not just words. Ambassador Ji Woo. The message was sent. In his office on the Council station, Yaris read it and felt something like hope for the first time in months. It wasn't acceptance. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was a door left slightly open. Now the Council had to prove they could walk through it properly. The station at the edge of human space was new, built specifically for this meeting. It was human territory, human security, human terms. Chancellor Yaris arrived with a small delegation. No guards, no warships. Just 5 Council representatives in a simple transport vessel. Ambassador Ji Woo watched their ship dock from the observation deck. Beside him, Hana stood with arms crossed, still skeptical. Captain Dae-soon monitored security feeds, ready to respond to any threat. But they all knew this was different from before. She came alone, Hana observed. No fleet. No show of force. That's a start, Ji Woo replied. Let's see if the humility is real or just tactical. They met in a conference room with windows showing the stars. The human delegation was already seated when Yaris entered. She paused, seeming to take in the setup. This wasn't the Grand Council chamber with elevated platforms and dramatic lighting. This was a simple room with a table and chairs. Everyone on the same level. Everyone equal. Yaris sat down across from Ji Woo. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Then Yaris spoke. Thank you for agreeing to meet. I know we don't deserve this chance. Ji Woo inclined his head slightly. You're here. That's something. But Chancellor, we need more than gratitude. We need to understand that the Council has genuinely learned from what happened. We have. Or at least I have. I can't speak for everyone. Yaris spread her hands on the table. I've spent the last 3 months reviewing everything. Not just the obvious failures, but the deeper patterns. The Council had become arrogant. We believed our age meant wisdom, and our military strength meant authority. We forgot that respect cannot be demanded. You forgot we were people, Hana said bluntly. You treated us like primitives playing at civilization. Yaris flinched, but didn't look away. Yes, that's exactly what we did. And we were wrong. Catastrophically wrong. Councillor Minseo, a younger representative from a smaller species who had joined Yaris's delegation, spoke up. If I may, Ambassador, I'm part of the generation that grew up after you left. We watched everything that happened. We saw the recording of that final council session. We saw how you were treated. And we saw what the Council became without you. What did it become? Ji Woo asked. Brittle, Minseo replied. We thought the Council was strong because it had stood for 1,000 years. But strength isn't about how long you've existed. It's about how you adapt and grow. The Council stopped growing. It just assumed its way was the only way. You proved that wrong. Yaris took a deep breath. I've brought documentation of changes we've made. First, we removed Councillor Dreth and 3 others who shared his attitudes. Second, we've reformed our diplomatic protocols to eliminate the hierarchical structure that allowed elder species to dominate. Third, we've established a new council specifically focused on integrating newer species as full equals. She slid a data across the table. Ji Woo reviewed it carefully, Hana reading over his shoulder. The changes were substantial. Not cosmetic reforms, but real structural alterations to how the council operated. This is a good start, Jiwoo said carefully. But paper reforms are easy. The real question is whether attitudes have changed. They're changing, Yaris said. Not everywhere, not completely. But losing 6 member species and watching our economy collapse taught us things that no amount of debate could have. People understand now that we need partnerships, not subjects. We need cooperation, not control. Admiral Taemin appeared on a screen in the room, participating remotely from the Human Fleet Command. Chancellor Yaris, I have a question. The Council's military ran simulations about conflict with humanity. We know this. Those simulations showed you would lose badly. Did that change your attitude, or did the economic collapse change it? Yaris met his eyes steadily. Honestly? Both. The military simulations made us afraid. The economic collapse made us understand. Fear might have brought us to the table, but understanding is what made us reform. We didn't just lose battles in those simulations. We lost everything we claimed to stand for, which is Taemin pressed. Civilization, order, progress. We claimed the Council existed to promote those things. But we were promoting them through dominance, not cooperation. You showed us a different way. You walked away with dignity intact. You built your own prosperity. You helped species who asked politely instead of demanding obedience. And you did it all without us. Hannah leaned forward. So what do you want from this meeting, Chancellor? I want to ask if humanity would consider rejoining galactic civilization. Not the Council as it was, but something better. A real partnership of equals. Your voice would carry the same weight as any other, regardless of how long your species has been in space. Your contributions would be recognized and valued, and your dignity would never be questioned. Ji-woo sat back, considering. That's a significant change in tone from our last meeting. Everything has changed, Yaris said simply. We understand now what you were offering us 18 months ago. We were too blind to see it then. We're not blind anymore. The room fell silent. Ji-woo looked at his delegation. Hannah gave a small nod. Dae-soon did the same. Tae-min on the screen showed agreement. These were the people who had stood with him when he walked out of the council chamber. If they were willing to try again, perhaps it was worth the risk. Chancellor Yaris, Ji-woo said carefully, humanity is willing to consider renewed engagement. But there are conditions. First, we require formal council acknowledgement of the mistakes made in our previous negotiations. A public statement, not a private apology. Second, any new agreements must be reviewed by both parties as absolute equals. No senior species and junior species. Just partners. Third, we need guarantees that the reforms you've described will be maintained and expanded. And fourth, we reserve the right to withdraw again if we're treated with disrespect. All of that is acceptable, Yaris said immediately. More than acceptable. It's what should have been offered from the beginning. Then we can begin discussions, slowly, carefully, with both sides proving through actions that they mean what they say. Yaris stood and extended her hand. Ji-woo stood as well and took it. The gesture was human, but its meaning was universal. Partnership, equality, respect. Over the following weeks, the Council made good on its promises. A public statement was released acknowledging the Council's failures in dealing with humanity. It was broadcast across the galaxy, translated into every language. The statement didn't make excuses or shift blame. It simply admitted the truth. The Council had been wrong, had learned from its mistakes, and was committed to doing better. The response was mixed. Some species praised the honesty. Others said it was too little too late. But most recognized it as a genuine attempt at accountability, something the Council had never done before. Ambassador Sojin worked with Counselor Minseo to establish new protocols for human-council interaction. Every meeting was recorded. Every agreement was written with input from both sides. Every dispute was addressed through dialogue, not dictation. Dr. Yuna, the xenobiologist, led a team back into Council space to help address the medical crisis. But this time, the Council paid fair prices for human assistance. They acknowledged the expertise humans brought. They treated the medical teams as valued partners, not charity workers. Young-Su's energy systems were restored throughout Council space, but with new agreements in place. The Council paid licensing fees for the technology. They received training on maintaining it properly. And they acknowledged that the systems were human innovations deserving of all respect and fair compensation. The pirates that had flourished during humanity's absence found themselves facing human patrols again. But this time, the Council formally requested human assistance in maintaining order, recognizing that humanity had been doing this work all along without credit. Trade networks reopened. Research collaborations resumed. The galaxy slowly knitted itself back together, but the pattern was different now. Human voices carried weight. Human contributions were recognized. Human dignity was protected. Admiral Tae Min kept the human fleet at ready status, just in case. The defensive installations on human borders remained active. Trust was growing, but it would take time to fully rebuild. That was understood on both sides. 6 months after the first meeting, Ji-Woo and Yaris met again on the Council station. This time, Ji-Woo arrived to a very different reception. Council members stood as he entered. They addressed him as an equal. They listened when he spoke. "It's strange being back here," Ji-Woo admitted to Yaris privately before the session began. "It's strange having you back," Yaris replied. "But good strange. A council feels more honest now, less certain of itself, but more open to growth. Growth through humility. There's a lesson in that." The session began. The topic was a new initiative for resource sharing among council species. The proposal had been drafted jointly by human and council representatives. When it came time to vote, humanity's vote carried the same weight as species who had been in the council for centuries. The vote passed unanimously. After the session, as delegates filed out, Ji-Woo stood at the same window where he'd stood 18 months ago. Hannah joined him. "Do you think it will last?" she asked. "The changes? I don't know," Ji-Woo said honestly. "But I think we proved something important. We proved that dignity matters more than acceptance. We proved that respect cannot be demanded. And we proved that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away and come back when things are right," Hannah added. "Yes, on our terms." As equals, they watched the stars together, two humans who had stood their ground when it mattered most. Behind them, the galaxy was learning a lesson that would echo for generations. You cannot force cooperation. You cannot demand respect. You cannot mock a people and expect them to remain. But if you learn humility, if you acknowledge mistakes, if you approach with genuine partnership in your heart, even broken relationships can heal. The Galactic Council had learned this lesson the hard way. They had learned it through economic collapse, political crisis, and the humbling experience of realizing they needed humanity far more than they had ever imagined. And humanity, for their part, had learned that standing up for yourself sometimes means walking away. That dignity has value beyond immediate gain, that the long game sometimes wins over the short game. The galaxy was changing. The old certainties were gone. The future was being written by beings who understood that strength comes in many forms. And sometimes the greatest power is knowing when to say no. Young observer, Min Co, a junior human diplomat who had watched everything unfold, recorded her thoughts in a personal log that night. Today I watched Ambassador Ji Woo address the Galactic Council as an equal. I watched species who once mocked us listen with genuine respect. I watched the galaxy begin to understand what humanity has always known. We are not special because we're stronger or smarter or older. We're special because we understand our worth, and we refuse to let anyone diminish it. That's the real lesson of what happened. Not that we could destroy them or outlast them, but that we didn't need their approval to know our value. We knew it all along. We just had to make sure they knew it too. The stars shone above the council station, ancient and patient. They had watched empires rise and fall. They would watch many more. But they had never seen quite this story before. A young species that walked away from power and returned only when respect was genuine. It was a new kind of strength. And the galaxy was still learning what it meant.